Hey guys, Carl from Moose Plays. Today I'm going to be taking a look at Patriot from designer Anthony Kirkham and publisher Grand Gamers Guild. This is one that's set in a sort of dystopian future taking place amongst the politicians and the government in this strange society. And it is designed as a multiplayer sort of semi-co-op. Somebody's trying to assassinate the president and other people are trying to stop them while working their way through this sort of ruminations and rumblings of this sort of political and government landscape. But here, I'm obviously running a solo channel, so I wanted to take a look at this game because I heard that this game that is this sort of interactive multiplayer semi-co-op game does now have a solo mode added into it. And I'm always curious to see how solo designers tackle a solo mode in a game that's so sort of non-solo and so incredibly interactive. So I was very curious to see how this one plays out. Disclaimer, I was given a review copy of this game for this video, but as always, I will do my best to give you my own honest opinion on the game. With that said, let's head down to the table to see how the solo mode one in this actually plays, and then I'll meet you back up here to let you know what I think. To set up a solo game of Patriot, begin by placing out the board with the 1 to 2 player side face up, marked here in the upper right corner. Next, separate the influence cards into finance, spy, science, and war, shuffling them up, and then dealing 10 of each type into this public opinion area. Then take the 40 cards made up of the 10 of each different type of influence, shuffle those together, placing them in this area here, and then placing the remaining 4 separate piles into these 4 spaces face down. Next, take the beacon cards and separate everything out that's marked 3 to 6 players, like these cards right here in the top left corner. And then once those have been removed, give all of the other cards a shuffle, placing the shuffle deck up here in the beacon draw pile, and then turn over the top 4 cards to fill in these 4 spaces. Next, to continue setting up the cards, take the riot deck here, giving those a shuffle, placing them right here. And then finally taking this brief card deck, removing any cards that are marked either 3 to 6 players like you see right here in the top left corner, or that are marked like this as a super brief. The 3 to 6 player cards will be removed from the game, but these super briefs will be set off to the side and might come into play later in the game. The remaining brief cards are then shuffled and then placed out into the brief card area on the board. To continue board setup, place the round tracker here on the first round space, and then set the threat level to 0, the civil unrest to 0, and the taxes to 0 as well. In addition, you need to set up the campaign mode tracker. Normally you would place your character figure on this in a standee, but there's nothing to track your character movement on screen or on board, and I want you to be able to follow everything I'm doing on the screen. So instead I'm going to use this campaign mode tracker, and that starts here at the base on player 1 because I am playing a solo game. Off to the side of the board, I will place these coins. I'm going to place them off screen over here next to the treasury space right here. And then these science tokens, I'll place them up here near the science area of the board. And then also up there, I'm going to be placing out my rioter tokens and troop tokens. There are also minis for these in the game, but because you are watching from top down, the minis will be a little bit hard to see, so I'm going to be using these tokens instead for this playthrough. Finally, to finish setting up the play area, I will need to place out this D8 and this D4 that will be used for a variety of different things in the game. And then I need to set up sort of the scenario that I'm playing and also the character that I will be playing as. There are 10 different scenarios in the solo mode. For this playthrough, I will be playing the Frank the Alien scenario. So I need to find the tile board from Frank the Alien scenario, slot that in up here in the top corner. Now you notice it doesn't really fit that shape, and that's because it's a double-sided board. And the other side of the board does fit that shape perfectly. But this one, we'll just have to stick over the line just a little bit. And while there's no real reason that you have to play each scenario with the character of the scenario, I will be doing that for this video, just to make things simple. So I need to then take my Frank the Alien character card, which I will set down over here. My Frank the Alien standee, which I'm just going to lay down flat so you can see it on screen. Then I also need to grab, and I don't know how well you're going to see these on camera, but this little AP chit and this ability use token. The ability use is going to help me track my one use ability, and I'll explain that later on in the video. And this AP will get set to 8, which is the highest. If you can see here on the track, the 8 is the highest non-red number on this character's card, so that is the amount of AP or action points that it will start each round with. So set that little AP to 8. And that's it for the basic game setup, except that every scenario might have some kind of unique setup as well that's needed. And in this case, the Frank the Alien scenario will be using hypnosis, and I'll explain what that is in a little bit, but I'm also going to then set out the hypnosis tokens that we will need for this particular scenario playthrough. And with that, I am all set up to play. However, I do still need to sort of explain to you what the scenario is, what kind of changes the scenario brings, and ultimately what endgame conditions are added from the scenario. But before I talk about the scenario itself, I want to walk you through sort of the basic rules and the basic structure of gameplay, and then I will talk about the scenario, how it changes that gameplay, and ultimately what I need to do to win or what will trigger my loss. Sorry, one last thing before I do get into gameplay. To start a solo game, I should start with 2 of every influence type. So I'm going to draw 2 finance influence, 2 spy influence, 2 science influence, and 2 war influence. And now I can walk you through gameplay. So a solo game of Patriot is going to play out over a series of rounds, and that number of rounds is going to change depending on which scenario you play. But each round is going to play out in the same way. And first, you're going to sort of take the player turn, and then after you'll do sort of end of round checks and cleanups before starting the next round. So every player turn is going to start the same way. And that's going to be by drawing the influence cards for the round. And to do that, each character has a set of influence listed at the bottom of their card. And in a solo game, I will take what it shows at the bottom of this card, plus 4 additional influence cards of my choice of any kind. And then additionally, in the solo game, I will also be starting each round with 2 science markers as well. So for the Frank the Alien character, I will be drawing 0 finance, 2 spy, 2 science, and 2 war influence, again, plus whatever else I would like to for cards in addition. So I'll start first by 2 spy, 1 and 2, then 2 science, 1, 2, and then finally 2 war, 1 and 2, and then I get to draw 4 of any that I'd like to draw. Now you can see that each of these cards has a number on it that tells you how much they're each worth. So currently I have 4 war influence, I've got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 science, 2, 4, 5, 9 spy, and 4 finance. So probably my extra cards I want to draw war and finance. You'll see that this spy has some stuff on it. I'll explain what that means, but the text that's printed on an influence card is going to trigger when I use that influence card to take care of one of my brief cards later on, and I'll explain that when I get back to the brief cards section. So right now I'm going to start by drawing 1 war. Yeah, I'll take a second war. All right, and then I might as well take some finance. Let's see what we get. 2, 4, 6. Yeah, I'll take one more finance. This will get me sort of balanced. All right, so I've got 8, 9, 9, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so 8, 9, 9, 8 is pretty well balanced. That's fine with me, and I will take 2 of these science markers into my hand. And then, after that starting setup piece of each round, I go into the sort of meat of the player turn, and that is spending my action points to take actions on the board. And this is sort of like a worker placement game in that I move my character around the board, taking the actions wherever I place my character. So let me explain all of the different locations on the board, what they do, and then I'll sort of get into what the scenario is doing, what sort of unique twists the scenario offers, and sort of why I'm doing those things that I'm doing. So first, the board is split up into 4 different sections: the treasury, the surveillance center, the lab, and the war room. And each of those sections is sort of going to be focused on doing different things. The treasury is all about money. So the first space of each section is simply going to be a very easy way for me to get more influence cards. I can simply spend 1 AP to pick up a finance influence, a spy influence, a science influence, or a war influence. The other spots in the treasury, again, are going to all be about money. So if I go to defense space 2, I'm going to be able to gain coins from the bank off screen here and add them to my treasury. Any coins that are in treasury are then able to be spent to take other actions later on, or to potentially fulfill certain endgame conditions. So if I spend 4 AP and increase my civil unrest by 2, I can add 2 coins here. Likewise, if I spend 7 AP and increase this by 4, I can add 5 coins into my treasury. Defense space 3 here is raising taxes, and these taxes are going to be at the end of every round. While we're doing that sort of check and clean up step, I'm going to receive a number of coins into my treasury equal to the current tax level, and right now that is a 0. But going here will allow me to raise that to 2, then 4, and then finally to 6. That's going to cost 3 AP plus increasing my civil unrest by 4. And then finally, the last space here is briefly predict the future. I can spend 3 AP to draw 2 brief cards, discard one, and keep the other one as the brief card that I will be resolving at the end of the round. Because at the end of every round, I will be resolving brief cards. And those brief cards are going to offer me some kind of situation that I'm going to spend influence to sort of manipulate, either for good use or not. And you'll see how that plays out in just a little bit. So again, at the treasury, I can add coins to the treasury, I can raise the taxes, or I can get a look at upcoming brief cards. Now, I do want to pause here for just a second because several of those actions now I've mentioned increase the level of civil unrest. And it's important to know what that is and what that does because that will affect my ability to take actions as well. Anytime the civil unrest hits 6, I'm going to turn over this top riot card. And I'm going to place that down here in one of the 2 open slots of the riot. I can only ever have 2 riot cards. And the way that works is it's going to tell me to roll the D4 die to place out rioters in different locations on the board. And any location that has a rioter cannot be used by me until I get rid of that rioter. In addition, anytime I draw a riot card and at least 1 rioter gets placed out, I will increase the threat level. And one way that I can lose in every scenario, or at least every scenario that I've played, if that ever gets up to this skull and crossbones at the end, I instantly lose the game. So I have to be careful that riots aren't happening often. Also, again, when I place out rioters, I'm going to roll a D4. If the space is empty, I will place a rioter in that space. If there's already a rioter in that space, I got lucky and I don't need to place them out. If all 4 spaces are ever filled with rioters and I have to place another rioter, regardless of what number I roll, that final rioter will go into space 5. And you can see here printed on the board that when a rioter is added to space 5, that will also increase the threat track. So I need to make sure that my spaces don't get completely filled up, or I run the risk of driving the threat track up to the end and losing. I'll come back to those rioters when they happen later on in the game, and also when we start talking about the war room over here, but I wanted you to understand that because that's what civil unrest does, and it's going to affect the locations or block me from locations in this game. So moving to the surveillance center, this area is all about launching beacons and then using the beacons for their effect. And basically the beacons are going to be one use per round special abilities or effects that I can trigger once I've launched that beacon. So again, space 1 is just about taking a spy influence card. Space 2 is how I launch a beacon. And right now the available beacons to me are the 4 beacons that are on the board. And to launch one, I'm going to spend 4 AP and 4 coins from my treasury to launch a beacon that's already on the board. Or I can spend 2 AP and 2 coins to draw a new beacon, replacing something that's already there and activating that instead. And when a beacon is launched, we're simply going to place 1 coin on the launch space of that beacon, because later on I can go to this space up here, defense space 4, spending 0 AP and then whatever the cost is on that beacon to use that beacon and trigger the action. And I'll show you those in just a second, but I want to talk about this final space. This final space allows me to use 3 AP to draw as many new beacons as I want to from this deck to replace beacons that are already out, launched or unlaunched. But it's worth mentioning that if I replace a beacon that has been launched, the new beacon that replaces it will not yet be launched. So let me show you the 4 beacons that we're starting the game with and explain what they do. So the first beacon here will cost a riot being commenced, but it will decrease the threat level by 1. And I'll explain why that might be an interesting option once I get into the war room. Next, this beacon action costs 2 AP and would allow me to skip the brief card at the end of that round. The next beacon I have is +1 threat, allows me to raise the base taxes. That's pretty useful. But threat is scary if I'm being overrun by riots. And this final beacon that unfortunately I drew at the beginning of the game is a broken beacon. So I can't do anything with this unless I decide to take that action to replace it with something else. So those are my 4 beacons for this game. And now moving into the next section over here, the laboratory. Again, the first space is simply to take a science influence card. And over here is going to sort of be how we sort of maintain or manipulate things in game. This track up here says roll for civil unrest. Going to this space, spending 3 AP and rolling a D8, I can potentially get rid of civil unrest, or even if I roll poorly, add civil unrest. So with a 5 to 6, I will remove 1 civil unrest, sliding the number up. 7 to 8 gets rid of 2 civil unrest, but on the other hand, 3 to 4 gains 1 civil unrest, and 1 to 2 gains 2 civil unrest. But I can always spend 2 influence cards to increase my die by 1. So if I want to drive that number higher to get rid of more civil unrest, I can start throwing away some of these influence cards. And it's worth pointing out here, or stressing here, that I'm throwing away each 1 card increases the value, each 2 thrown away cards increases the value by 1. And I point that out because the next space here, Commence Science Project, I can go here for 2 AP and 2 civil unrest to roll a D8. And in this case, if I roll a 2 to 4, nothing happens. 5 or 6 will get me an additional 2 science markers. 7 to 8 will get me 4 science markers. And a 1 will actually lose me 2 science markers, assuming that I have them to lose. And I point out the cards being thrown away for the civil unrest because in the case of the science project, for every 1 that I want to add to my roll, I have to spend 2 science influence, not cards. So if I spend a card worth 2 science influence, that will raise the value by 1. I don't have to count cards, only the actual value of the cards that I'm throwing away. And for the most part, the reason that I want to have these science markers is that there is a free space here that simply costs me 4 markers. I say free because it doesn't cost money or AP or civil unrest, but I do need to have 4 science markers. And if I go to that space and spend 4 science markers, I can move this campaign tracker 1 space to the right. And the reason I want to do that is because the two spaces on the right side are going to trigger positive effects in my scenario. And the two spaces on the left are going to trigger negative effects in my scenario. And I'll again explain those to you in just a second when I talk about the scenario. But I really do want to get those positive effects. And if I can get all the way up to this +2 area, I'm actually going to reduce the threat once before resetting back to the base level. Likewise, if I ever get down to the second negative level, I'm going to increase the threat once and come back to the base level. It's also worth mentioning that at the end of that sort of round check and reset piece at the end of every round, this campaign tracker will always move one space to the left. So I need to kind of keep pushing it to the right to avoid just naturally sliding to the left. The last space in this area is the special sort of scenario effect, and I will save that one for last so I can use the scenario to explain what that is. So let's move on to the war room. And again, the first space, as with the others, is how I get war influence, simply by trading 1 AP for 1 influence card. And the other things that are here is how I deal with the rioters. This bottom space here will cost me 2 AP, rolling a D8, and based on the results, will allow me to remove rioters from the board. If I roll a 1, I'm actually going to lose a troop, which I'll explain in just a second. And if I don't have a troop, add 1 rioter. But otherwise, a 2 to 6 will execute 1 rioter, and a 7 to 8 will execute 2 rioters. And in this case, I can't add value to the dice, but I can throw away a card to re-roll the die as many times as I want to. Every influence card I trash, I will re-roll the die 1 time. And the other 2 spaces here are what's interacting with these troops. And the troops are basically going to be a way to block rioters from coming out onto the board. If I go here, I can spend 4, 6, or 8 AP to place 2, 3, or 4 troops at any location on the board. And why that's important is because if there's a troop at a location that a rioter will then go to later, the troop goes away rather than placing the rioter. So the troop prevents rioters from getting added to the board. And remember that the threat level only goes up if at least 1 rioter is added by a riot card. So if I manage to block them all from being placed, the threat level won't go up either. But once a troop is added to the board, it stays at a location unless I use this move deployed troops action at a cost of 1 AP to move those troops to other locations. And with that action, I can move as many troops as I want to, but I have to point out that the troops can only ever be 1 in each location. I can never have more than 1 troop in a single location. So why am I doing all of these things? Well, I'm doing all of these things to sort of complete the scenario that I've chosen. And again, for this game, I will be playing the Frank the Alien scenario. So let me go show you the story of the scenario, give you the breakdown of what needs to be done in the scenario. I'll go back to explaining what that extra defense space does in the science area or the lab area. And then I will play through sort of my turn and then show you what happens after that. So you get an idea of how the game flow works. And then I'll continue the playthrough to end game. So in this story, the campaign mode Frank the Alien story, it says, delectable, just divine, and you call this the milk of the cow? Yes? But how does the cow gift a human with milk? Wait, humans do what to the cow to obtain milk? Oh dear, humans are disgusting. After numerous moments like the above on live television, Carmonia rioters commence banding together to form a SWAT group of assassins devoted to uncovering the true identity of Frank. To seal the deal, on one of these television appearances, Frank's afro wig slipped off during a speech revealing his true bald alien head. While Frank's witty and quirky personality endeared him to the citizens, it only went so far. An alien is president, not in Carmonia. Nonetheless, Frank still has a few tricks up his sleeves. He has modified his disintegration ray to temporarily hypnotize cities within Carmonia while he gathers enough finances, troops, science markers, and precious beacons to fix his ship and escape Earth. So, for this mission, it says Frank's true identity has been exposed. He must use his modified disintegration ray to hypnotize Carmonian cities, represented by each defense space, stockpile resources, and evade capture in order to escape Earth alive before the end of the 5th round. So the win condition for this game is that by the end of round 5, I have to gain troops on at least 10 defense spaces, 4 science markers per player, so I need to have 4 total science markers in hand, and 8 coins in the treasury. I also need to launch 2 beacons. They don't need to be active, but they need to have been launched. And I also, in addition to having all of that stuff, I need to have hypnosis tokens, which are these purple tokens that I pulled out at the beginning of the game, on at least 10 tiles or 10 spaces on the board. So again, in order to win, I need to have troops on 10 spaces, 4 science markers, 8 coins in the treasury, launch 2 beacons, and place at least 10 hypnosis tokens out in the spaces on the board. On the other hand, if the threat level ever reaches skull and crossbones, or I don't meet the win objective by the end of round 5, I will lose the game. So you might be asking about the hypnosis tokens. Let's go back to the board for a second. There is a special game condition for this campaign that says, instead of activating the roll to execute rioters, so if I come to this roll to execute rioters space, instead of rolling to execute rioters, I can instead perform a roll on a defense space that contains a hypnosis token by rolling a d4. And for each space that contains a hypnosis token, if I roll an even number, the rioter on that space will turn into a troop. So I'm hypnotizing the rioters to sort of join my side. But if I roll an odd number, nothing happens. Then coming back to the board and looking at our special setup tile here. Again, if I'm on the right side of the campaign track at the end of a round, I will be rolling on the positive effect trigger. And if I'm on the left side, I will be rolling on the negative effect trigger. And these say positive effect. First, I'm going to activate this tile. And this tile space says I will deploy 2 hypnosis tiles to any defense spaces. And remember, I need to have at least 10 of those out by the end of the game to win, or by the end of the 5th round to win. And then additionally, roll a d4. If I roll a 1, I get to add 1 troop somewhere. If I roll a 2, I gain 2 science markers. If I roll a 3, I gain a coin. And if I roll a 4, I get to place another hypnosis token anywhere out there. Likewise, on the negative side, I will roll a d8. If it's an odd number, I lose 4 coins in the treasury. And if it's an even number, I increase the civil unrest by 4, which is very likely to be causing a riot. And if I roll an 8, even numbers is triggered and civil unrest is increased by another 2 points. So that's going to be an automatic riot if I roll an 8. And it's worth mentioning here that once the civil unrest hits 6 and triggers a riot, it will go back to 0. So if it was already at a number higher than, say, 0, and I added 6 civil unrest, I wouldn't continue to wrap around. That would still just go back to 0. It's just an automatic riot triggered. And otherwise, during the game, if I want to use defense space 4 to put out 2 hypnosis tiles, I will have to shuffle in 2 of those super briefs that I pulled out at the beginning of the game into the top 5 brief cards. And also increase the threat by the number of players, so in this case would be 1. So I really don't want to use that space, except if at the end of the game I really need to place out some more hypnosis tiles. That might be the way to do it. All right, so back to the way the round works. After I've taken all of my actions, I will draw and resolve a brief or resolve the brief that I saw from predicting the future. I will then roll a I will then trigger either the positive or negative effect wherever I am, and that's the end of the round. At the end of the round, I will check to see if I have won or lost the game, and if not, I will then look to see if there are any riot cards that are currently active, and they will reactivate again at that time, placing out more rioters on the board, potentially causing some threats to increase if we place out in any of those defense space 5 locations. Then again, I will move my campaign tracker 1 space to the left. I will add coins equal to my tax level, and then I will advance to the next round. So let me go ahead and get into the first round, and hopefully any questions you might have will be resolved as I play through. So I need to, again, get a whole lot of stuff done. 10 troops, 4 science, 8 coins, 2 beacons, and 10 hypnosis tokens. But those hypnosis tokens can very much help me turning rioters into troops. Because I should mention, I didn't yet, when I do have active riot cards, the only way to clear a riot card is to completely clear all the rioters from the board. So I need to focus on putting out troops. I would like to focus on driving that to the right. I start with 2 science. I would potentially like to launch a beacon this turn. I'd love to raise my taxes. There's a whole lot of stuff I want to work on. But unfortunately, I only have 8 AP to do it. So I definitely want 2 so that I can advance on the campaign tracker with more science markers. So that's 2. That leaves me 6 left. 3 gets me base taxes, but that's already 5, and that leaves me only then another 3. So I can't then launch a beacon. However, 4 and 2 is going to increase my civil unrest, so maybe I need to go there to drop that civil unrest. Yeah, let's focus that way. Hold on, sorry. Before I do anything, I need to show you every character has strengths and weaknesses in the game. And in this game, as I'm playing with Frank the Alien, they've got some special stuff. And you'll notice that some of the description only works in multiplayer games, so there is some spaces where it says 1 to 2 player variant. So my strengths first. Every turn I pick up an additional extra influence card of any type. So I need to do that right now. Then once per turn, I can disintegrate or execute 5 rioters at once for no cost. That might be really great sort of mid-game if I get swamped. Then my weaknesses say the commence science projectile costs 3 AP and 2 civil unrest. So this actually costs me 1 additional AP than it normally would, which is going to be really painful for this game, but we'll see what happens. Also, I have a bad disguise. It says that his riots trigger at 5 instead of 6 civil unrest, which also is going to make things very challenging. All right, so I got to be careful with civil unrest. And I don't really want to trigger that much stuff happening right now. So realistically, if this is 3 AP now, 3 and 3 and 3 is 9. I can't do that. So I've got 3 and 3 and 2. And I can't really launch a beacon without money either, which is unfortunate. So I do want to spend this turn increasing taxes for sure. So I'm going to come here, spend 3 AP. I'm down to 5. Increase civil unrest by 2. Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. That's by 4 civil unrest. Yeah, no, I'm changing my mind. I'm not doing that this turn. I will focus on that later. Because I don't really need to accept that I want to have money to win the game. So instead, I'm going to get coins instead. Yes. That cost me 4 AP. That's a problem too. Hold on, let me think this through. I can't launch a beacon with no money. Yeah. But that's 3 and that's 4, and that's going to cause a riot. And I don't want to riot yet because I'm not ready for it. All right, then forget it. I am going to do this. Gain coins for 4 AP. Goes down to 4. 2 civil unrest. But I place 2 coins in my treasury. Then I'm going to come over and commence the science project for 2 AP. So I'm down to 2. No, sorry, that's 3 AP because of my research specimen problem. So I'm down to 1. And 2 civil unrest points me to level 4. And I roll a D8. Which rolls a 3, which is bad because I want at least 2 science markers. So I need to increase by 2, which means I need to spend 4 science influence. Let's hope that the brief card is not science this turn, but that's 1, 2, 3, 4 right there. Hold on. I'm kind of cheating right now, but I would have done it anyway. I want 1 more science card for that extra card that I would have gotten from him at the beginning because I knew that I was doing that. All right, I'll remember to do that next time at the beginning, but that does get me now 2 more science markers. And knowing that I might be doing that again later, and I might want science for the brief, should I need it, I am going to use my last AP to pick up a science influence, which gets me 1 more science card. And then finally, for my last turn of the game, I'm going to spend those 4 science markers to move up once on the track. That's the end of the first round, so I'm going to draw a brief card. And that brief card looks like this. Every brief card is going to give you a little bit of a story text up here, tell you what influence you need to change sort of the results of that brief, and then what's going to happen based on the number of, or the value of that influence that comes out. So here it says, no, taxes are good, people are just dumb. So I need to use finance and war influence. If I get 16 or more value, I get to raise the base taxes, which would be amazing if I can do it. 11 to 15, nothing happens. And up to 10, I get a riot. So I need to make sure that I don't incite a riot. So I need to end up with at least 11. And the way this is going to work is I can put as many cards in as I want to, matching those symbols to increase the value to whatever I want. But then I'm also going to draw the top 2 cards from the public opinion deck. And any symbol that matches, means finance or war, will increase my total. But any ones that don't match will decrease my total. So I need to make sure that whatever I put in plus whatever comes out of there, or minus whatever comes out of there, will not go below 11, because I don't want a riot to happen. But if I can get it to go over 16, I can raise taxes, which is something I really want to happen, and not having to go there to do it would be awesome. So, finance, I've got 2, 4, 6, 8. War, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And this card says that if I use this in a brief, each player will gain one influence card of any type. So again, 2, 4, 6, 8, 2, 4, 6, 8. The most I can spend is 16. So unless I get lucky and draw a war or finance here, I'm very unlikely to get above the 16. Do I want to wipe out both of those columns? I know that I'm getting 2 war back. I know that I get an additional 5 influence cards at the start of the next round. So I'm not really all that worried. So let's do it. I'm going to spend all of those cards. So that's 8 finance and 8 war for 16. And I get to draw 1 influence card of any type after this goes through. It says each player, but I'm not playing a multiplayer game. So we've got 2 spy, and we've got another 1 spy. So unfortunately, 16 minus 3 is 13, which means I don't raise taxes, but it also means that nothing happens and I don't incite a riot. So I'm okay with that for now. And I get to draw 1 more influence card of any type. I will take a war card. No, I'll take a finance because I get war automatically. 1 finance, that's not great, but these all get put away. So I do know that 2 spy have come out of the public opinion already. Then I'm going to trigger the positive effect on here because I am there. So first, activate the campaign tile. Says deploy 2 hypnosis tiles to any defense spaces. And I like to use that science space, so I want to make sure that that's not going to hurt me. And I need to start launching beacons for sure, at least 2. So I'm going to put that one there. And then I roll a D8. No, sorry, the D8 is for the negative. Roll a D4 in this case. I rolled a 2, which says I gain 2 science markers, which is cool because that means I will start this round with 4 and I won't have to use that space to take advantage of the campaign thing. All right, then end of round cleanup. We did not win, we did not lose. There are no riots. This slides back 1 more. I don't have any taxes. I don't have any beacons to reset. So we simply move on to the next round, starting with influence again. I get to spy. 1 and 3, and I'm going to put that under that 4 so I can remember I have that action. And just so you know that I have that action, this action says, if I use this in a brief, I draw twice as many brief cards as there are players, and shuffle 1 super brief in there, and place that on top of the brief card draw pile. And then once it's played, remove it from the game. But in a solo game, I'm not going to get through all of the spy briefs anyway, so that's not going to be a problem. But I really don't want a super brief, so I may end up trading that card in for manipulating a die at some point later on. Then this goes back up to 8. I continue drawing, 2 more science, a 1, and a 1, 2 more war, which is 1, and another 1. That's not great. And I get to draw 5 more. So I'm going to take a war. I'll do another war. I'll do a finance. Ugh. Another finance. Another 1. And I get 1 more. I might as well take another finance because 3 is very low. Oh, there's a 4. Good. Okay. And I also get 2 science markers at the start of every round as well, which is great because I can take that for free. And I need to work on getting my civil unrest to go down because I'm not doing great. Let's see. Commence a riot. Decrease threat by 1 is a beacon. +1 threat, raise base taxes. That could be nice to have. I'm not super scared of threat, because I don't think I'm going to have 6 riots. And using it to raise base taxes could be incredibly helpful. 2 AP and 2 coins. No, I'm going to need coins to do that. But if I do anything right now, I'm going to get some civil unrest. I don't have to go here this time. All right, so I am going to go here and spend 3. No, I'm not. Hold on a minute. Because gaining coins costs 4 AP. Launching a beacon costs another 4 AP. That's my 8 already. I think I have to do it though. So I'm going to go here. Unfortunately, what that's going to do is 4 AP, so I'm down to 4. Which means this goes up by 2, which is going to cause a riot, and that goes back again. So I am going to trigger my first riot. But I'm also, by doing that, adding 2 coins into the board, and hopefully this riot card is not so bad. First off, remembering if I place any rioters out, my threat will increase by 1. And it says each round and upon drawing 1 to 4 players, add 2 to each location. Yeah, that's a problem. Remember here it says in the war room there is no defense base 4, so if I roll a 4, nothing happens. That would be great. All right, so we're going to place this down here, and actually let me move my character over to the other side, like that. And now I got to roll a d4 twice for each location. So 4 blocks off the predicting of the future, and 2 is blocking off that coin. So I'm glad that I did it when I did. Next, 2 blocks off launching a beacon, unless I can turn that into a troop. So I may have to use this instead of doing what I was originally planning on doing. And a 3 blocks off reprogramming. In the science lab, 3 blocks off my science space, which is also not great. And my 4 is going to block off that, which I'd really rather not use anyway. In the war room, I got a 3 and a 1. Wow, that's bad. I didn't get any doubles. So we're not doing great right now. I've got lots of rioters out on the board that I do kind of want to take care of. Remembering, though, I do also have that once per game ability to get rid of 5 rioters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 6 rioters. Okay. And I'm left with 4 AP. And I think I'm going to try and convert some. So let's come over here to the roll to execute a rider, except I'm not. I'm going to try and use my hypnosis. And first I got to drop down 2 AP. And again, I'm rolling a d4. And for every even number, I convert a rioter. So let's see first over here, hypnosis ray. Even, yay. That rioter is now a troop. Cool. I don't know how to make that happen without being in the way, but let's put a troop there, because hypnosis doesn't matter while there's a troop there. And another even number, yay, that rider is also now a troop. So those spaces are protected, and we have 2 less riders. Great. I still have 2 AP left. And I could go here to launch a random beacon, which might not be a bad idea. Or I can stay here and try to kill some rioters. But I don't think that's a real important thing, because I got some troops out. Nothing's full. Even if the riots trigger again, nothing's going to go crazy on me. I did just realize the threat should have gone up with those rioters. So I'll turn that up 1 space. Then, yeah, I'm going to launch a random beacon. So 2 AP, which wipes out my AP, and 2 coins, is going to draw the first random beacon and launch it. Which is great because I can use that instantly to just get rid of this broken one. And I got this one, which says, for a cost of nothing, nil, that's awesome, activate the Commence Science project tile at no cost. That's amazing. So I never have to go to Commence Science, or at least I don't ever have to spend that if I only want to go there once per round. So that gets placed out, and a coin gets placed on there to show that it has been launched. And since it's free and doesn't cost me anything and doesn't mean anything, I will immediately go there and use it to roll a d8 on the science project track, which gets me a 4, which means nothing, but if I can go up one more, I get 2 science. So I will spend 2 science to increase by 1, which gets me 2 more science tokens. And then before I end the round, I'm going to go there, spending 4 science tokens to move up again. 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. And that is the end of the round. I draw my next brief card, which says, I think it's time you run those recruitment ads again. Finance or war, 15 plus, deploy 1 troop to each location and decrease civil unrest by 2. Well, civil unrest is not that bad right now. Troops wouldn't be bad to happen, but I don't know I want to spend that much stuff. 7 to 14, nothing. Up to 6, increase civil unrest. So I need to get more than 6 for sure. And again, spending finance and war. 5 and 5 makes 10. There are cards up to as high as 5 in there. So if I subtracted 5, I need to have at least 12 to avoid a 7. So let's do 5 finance. Yeah, you know what? Let's just do 6 and 6. 6 finance, 6 war. And then turning over 2 of these. Ooh, 2 war. So that's 12 and 2 is 14. And oh, look at that, another war, 15, 16. So without needing to spend as much as it costs, I did just trigger the 15 plus. So I get to place 1 troop in each location. So I can never place a troop where there's already a rioter. Rioters have to be killed before a troop can go down, or vice versa. A troop needs to be there to block a rioter. So I'm going to protect my base tax thing. I'm going to use a beacon space so I can continue using my beacons. I will protect civil unrest so I can deal with civil unrest if there is any. These are both blocks, so the only option I have is that one right there, and that is it for that. It also says decrease civil unrest, but that already happened when the riot happened, so nothing. I activate the positive effect trigger because I am at +1. First activating there, deploying 2 more hypnosis tokens out. And it doesn't say anywhere in the rules that hypnosis tokens can't get placed where rioters already are. It says any defense spaces. So I'm going to place 1 under the rioter in the bank and under the rioter in the... Yeah, just in case we want to swap. No, in case I need that. There. Like that. And then I get to additionally roll a d4, rolling a 3, which says gain 1 coin into the treasury. Cool. Then that slides back. Hold on, let's do it in order. Check the end of the round. Did I win? Did I lose? No, no. Then move that to the left. Then we reactivate the riots. So I'm rolling again a d4 twice for each area. So in the treasury, I got a 2, which already has a rioter, so nothing happens. A 4, which already has a rioter, so nothing happens. Yay. Next, a 1 places a rioter, and a 3, there's already a rioter. So a rioter goes there. In the lab, a 4 already has a rioter, and a 1 does not. So the rioter's going there. And over here on this side, a 3 already has a rioter. A 3, again, already has a rioter. I'm not placing in any bad spaces. There is no defense space 5 in here anyway. But even if there had been, that troop is still there. So there's still effectively an open space for a rioter there before I would place in a defense space 5. That's done. All the beacons get reset to launched if they were launched. Then I get taxes, which is still unfortunately at 0. And we move into round 3. Then before doing anything, I want to remember that I need to have troops on 10 spaces. Right now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 troops. So I need 4 more troops. I need hypnosis tokens on also 10 tiles. And I've got right now 1, 2, 3, 4 of those That's going to be something I need to push more of now. Although I get 2 per round if I activate the positive effect. So that's not super important. 4 science markers, well, that's sort of automatically happening, kind of. 8 coins in the treasury means I need to start raising taxes or I am in trouble. All right, then I start with influence again, means I get 2 spy. Ooh, a 5 and a 2. All right, hold on, let me put that back out again so we can see what's going on. 5, 2, 2, 2. We really need a brief that uses spy. Although I can start using that to manipulate some dice if needed. I get 2 more science. Ooh, a 4 and 1. Science is not doing bad. 2 more war. Yay, a 5 and a 2. All right, then I get to draw 5 more. I need to get lots of finance. 1, 2, 3. Let me do 1 more and then we'll figure something out. Oh, great. Okay, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's a lot. 5, 7, 8, 9, 13. And that's only 8. So let's take 1 more war into our influence. 1 more, but it says the player with the most amount of influence cards may add a troop to the war room or surveillance center. And that will always be me. So by playing that, I can add a troop to the board during a war brief. So that could be cool. Then I get 2 more science tokens. I still have the ability to kill lots of rioters. But I can also use my hypnosis to start turning some of them back. So, let's see. First off, I must raise taxes. So I am going to the taxes area for 3 AP and 4 civil unrest. So I'm starting at 8, going to 5. And that gets me 4 civil unrest, which is scary. Base taxes goes up to 2. I need to have 8 in the treasury by the end of round 5. Then, I need to hypnotize some people potentially. So I'm trying to hypnotize this guy over here and this guy over here. Let's see what happens. Ooh, that's an even number on the first one. So he becomes a troop. This guy over here. Ooh, another even number. I'm doing really nicely with these rolls today. There's my second troop. So now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 troops. Now, there could be more troops coming if rioters come out and start removing those troops. But for right now, I'm happy with that. Then, it doesn't really matter when I do it, but I'm going to go there and use that beacon to activate the science project. Hold on, did I pay for this? I did not. So I've got another 2 down. I'm at 3 now. I rolled a 1. That's horrible. But, yeah, 1 is bad because I'm losing stuff. I need to get it to at least a 2. I don't care if I have more because I already have 4 science markers. So I just need to spend 2 science influence. And I will spend that with a single card because, again, double cards could help me with other things like lowering civil unrest. So that was a wash, but that's fine. Then I still have 3 AP left. And I think that 3 AP has to go to lowering the civil unrest. So I'm going there and I will roll a D8, which is a 6. And for 6, it's -1 civil unrest. But if I spend 2 influence cards, I can get that to go down 2. Let's do that. I'm going to spend 2 of my single spy cards because I got lots of that stuff. And that goes back to level 2. And that is the end of my turn, except that went down 3 from that, right? Yep, 3. So I'm done, except that I'm going to, again, use the advance on the campaign tracker, spending 4 science, moving forward 1. We draw a beacon. Let's hope for goodness. All right, the next beacon says, it's a bit hard to appear inconspicuous when there are literally protesters at our doorstep. Influence are spy and war. If it's up to 12, a riot is incited. Otherwise, more than 13, nothing happens. That's bad. There's nothing good that comes from that. Which means I need to prevent that from happening. I don't want to use my 4 spy because that's going to put in a super brief. And I don't want a super brief. So, spy and war. I need to break 13. 13 plus 5 is 18. I don't think I'm spending that much. Let's see. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 23 is what I got. Yeah, I think I got to be careful. Yeah, let's do it. Because I'm going to get lots of spy anyway. I get lots of cards anyway. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14. I need to get to 18 to be careful with a 5, but I'm drawing 2, so it could potentially be really deadly. But anyway, 18. No, what did I say I have now? Sorry. 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 14. I need 4 more to be safe. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And adding this in is going to let me place a troop in the war room or the surveillance center, which is cool. No, it's not, because they're full. They are full. But I might use my ability right now. It says once per game. It doesn't say on your turn. It just says once per game you may disintegrate 5 rioters. So we're going to do that in a minute, but let's turn over. We'll see what happens. We get a -2 and -1. And there's an action on there. Each player gains 1 science marker. Cool. All right, so we succeed at nothing, which is much better than another riot for no reason. I still need to launch another satellite, but wait, hold on a second. I am going to use my once per thing to get rid of 5 rioters. It doesn't really matter where. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, there's only 6 out there. Cool. All right, they're all going to come right back in just a minute anyway, but I get to place out 1 troop in either war room or surveillance center. And I'll put it in the reprogram just in case I need it. There. Then, dealing with that, I'm going to place out 2 hypnosis tokens. One of them is going to go where the rider already is. And I will put another one on base taxes in case something happens there and I need it again. Like that. Then rolling a d4, I rolled a 3 again, I get 1 coin in here. Moving to the next round, we didn't win, we didn't lose. This goes back 1, riot commences. 1 gets a rioter, and 3 kills a troop. Up here, 3 kills a troop, and 4 kills a troop. That's not good because I need troops out there. Next up here, 3 kills a troop, and 2 kills a troop. All right, well, we may have to do a deploy troop action at some point. And down here, 2 kills that troop, and a 3 places a rioter right there. All right, this gets reset. I get 2 coins from taxes, yay. And I need to figure out a way to get more troops on the board. I'd love to get rid of rioters to get rid of some riot. I'm not going here to raise base taxes because I don't want to deal with, hold on, this goes back to 8. I don't want to deal with another riot. Yeah. I might roll to execute, although I can change him too. Beacons are important. We're going to focus on that for a second. Let's start there, but before I do that, I have to draw my influence. 2 spy. 1, 2. 2 science. 1, 2. 2 war. 1, 2. Anything else 5, and 2 more science tokens. Anything else 5. I need more war. I need more spy. So that's 1, yuck. 2, still yuck, but let's switch to something else for a minute. Spy, not great. Spy again, ooh, that's okay. Now, do I want a war or a finance? 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. One more war. There's a 4, perfect. Okay, then I am gonna start by launching a beacon. Spending 4 coins and 4 AP. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to launch the beacon that lets me take a threat to raise taxes. And I am going to do that because I'm not worried about threat right now. Taxes goes to 4. And I might as well, hold on, I had to go there to do that. And yeah, I'm going to go there again to do the other one like this. Nothing happens to do a science roll. 5, so I do get 2 markers unless I want to drive it up to get 4. I don't care about that. Do I? How many science markers? I need 4 at the end of the game. That's fine. Okay. I've got my 2 beacons. Science markers I'm not worried about. Treasury is going to be 4 plus whatever I can put in there. So I might want to go put some coins in there right now. That would end my turn. Getting rid of rioters right now is not so important. Oops, this is round 4, sorry. Yeah, getting rid of rioters is not so important. All right, so what I'm going to do is I am going to use my last turn to come here to gain coins. Means this goes to 0. This goes up 2 more to 4. Still no riot. Adds 2 coins into there, which plus 4 will get me 8. But I need to put out troops, and I can't do that right now. But that's okay. My last move is spending 4 science again. 1, 2, 3, 4, like that, to move up on the track. End of the round, we draw a brief. Let's pray for goodness. Influence needed. Anything. You've known this finance crisis would happen for years, didn't you, Secretary? Up to 10, a riot is incited. Discard all coins. If there are no coins, increase civil unrest. I can't let that happen. 11 to 17, increase civil unrest by 2. Again, not gonna happen. So 18 plus in order to do it. But again, anything that comes out of there is good. There's no negative. So I only need a 16 at maximum because there are at least a 1 that comes out. 16. That's not hard. 4 spy. 4 science. 4 war. Yeah, why not? Let's just be balanced. And 4 finance. That's 16. Plus 2 is 18. Plus 3 is, 21. That's way more than enough. Nothing happens. Good. Then I trigger Fred the Alien. Or Frank the Alien, sorry. Placing out 2 more hypnosis tokens. And I'm going to place them out where rioters already exist so I can potentially hypnotize them next turn. There and there. Like that. Then roll my d4, which is a 2, which is I gain 2 science markers, which is awesome. Yes. Okay, then that's the end of the round. We move to the next round. I didn't win, I didn't lose. Campaign tracker moves. We're going to roll for riot again. 1, nothing. 3, yes, a rioter. Next, 4, rioter. Damn it, that's bad. Yeah. That's a mistake. That's a real mistake. And you're going to hate me for this, but I'm retconning that because I didn't pay attention and I need to have put a hypnotize there. And if you hate me for it and I cheated, I'm sorry. 2 pulls away the troop. But that would have been the smart move if I had paid more attention and I wasn't trying to record on camera. Moving to the lab, a 1 and a 1 again. So there's going to be a rioter there. And over here, a 1, whoops, and a 4. There is no 4, so that's that. Increasing to the 5th round, gaining taxes, 4 more coins come out like that. Yes. Okay, then this is our last round. If we don't win this time, we lose. I need to draw 2 spy, Ooh, brief holder gains 1 influence of each type. That's not going to matter because it's the last round. 2 science. Brief card holder rolls a die. If 5 or more, each player gains a science marker. That could be very important because that might get me my last science marker at the end of the game. 2 war. 1 and 2. Yeah, finance is looking sad again. So I'm definitely taking 2 finance. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I don't mind spending this 4 because the super brief's not going to hurt me now because there's no more rounds after this. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 5, 6, yeah, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 14. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, I'm just going to take 2 more finance. Ooh, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Well, that one adds coins to the treasury, which is great for endgame. Okay, good. I get 1 more something. Let's just pick a war because why not? Can add a troop. That's awesome too. Says the least amount of influence cards, but I'm the only player, so I assume that means me also. And 2 science markers. And I need to finish with 4 science markers at the end of the round. Means I need to get 4 science markers, basically. Because I have to use those 4 to add the last 2 hypnosis tokens to win. I'm going to start by rolling to hypnotize rioters, starting here. That's a 4. Becomes a troop. Right here, that's a 2. Becomes a troop. My rolls have been spot on, huh? Rioter, that's a 2, becomes a troop. I promise you I'm not cheating. Nothing there. This guy is a 3. He stays there. So unfortunately I can't use the beacon unless I do something to get rid of him. And I don't really care to. How many troops do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold on, to do that it cost me 2 AP, so I'm down to 6. Yeah, I gotta get rid of that rioter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 troops. Yeah, unfortunately, I think what's gonna have to happen is, I gotta do that again. I can try and kill 2 rioters, and I need to place out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I can flip him though, that's a 6, and then placing out, I need 4 more troops? Yeah, I don't think I can win right now unless I can place out more troops somehow. Yeah, I don't have enough AP. Whoops. That adds a troop. That could potentially roll to add a troop. I think I'm in trouble. Oh, these should have been reset. All right, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I can only add 8 more troops. Or 3 more troops. The game's going to end before the riot happens again. Yeah, we're going to deploy troops. And that is going to be, this says treasury or lab. So I'm going to spend my last, oh no, that was only 2. But yeah, I'm going to spend my last 6. This is probably a mistake to add 3 troops. Here, here, and here. Means I'm out of AP. And I can't use that. Then I can't trigger anything. No, that's a problem. I changed my mind. I'm getting 2 back. I'm placing 1 less troop. Yeah, I'm placing 1 less troop. Because instead I'm going to go here and I'm going to 50-50 chance to get a troop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If he flips, then I can use that. If he doesn't flip, yeah, I have to take the thing. I'm going to have to hypnotize him. And I'm going to have to cross my fingers that this works. And it's a 3, so it doesn't. And I think that's the end of the game because I have no more AP. Damn it. I have no more AP, which means I can't spend science. But if I don't spend science, then I don't get this. Yeah, all right, well, I have to go here and spend 4 science, and we'll just have to hope that something happens. I do that to move up here. Yes. There's nothing else I can do. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so then, flipping that card, we got Secretary, no, you're a pro. Influence needed. Science and war, 12 plus, reduce civil unrest. 8 to 11, nothing. 7, increase civil unrest. I don't care about that right now, so I just got to make sure that it doesn't go up by 1 because it will riot again. But whatever, because it's end of game. I'm playing science or war, so I can definitely add a troop with this. I could potentially gain a science marker with that. And then I have no reason to save anything, so I'm just spending everything. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 15. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 14, that's 29. Minus 3, minus 2 is 24 total. Oh no, that's a plus 2. So that's 26 total. So I do that, I decrease civil unrest by 1, doesn't matter. I do that to place out 2 more hypnosis tokens, which isn't going to matter except that now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of those out. Good. Roll a d4. Hold on, before I do that, I gain 1 science token from this. I place out 1 troop from that in the lab. I roll a 4, place 1 hypnosis token. That's not at all what I needed. That is the end of round 5, checking a win. I needed to have 10 troops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 troops. 8 coins. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I got that. 4 science markers. I got 2. 10 hypnosis tokens. I got 11. So I'm 2 troops short, and I'm 2 science markers short. Unfortunately, I did lose the game, but it was very close, and I probably could have done better. But anyway, you get an idea for how the game plays. So while we're here, I do like to take a look at the components. You've pretty much seen the components as we've been playing them. The quality of everything's not bad. The cards are glossy. They don't really have a linen finish to them, but they're a nice card. All of the token bits are, thick and very well serviceable. All of the iconography and symbols on everything makes good sense and work well. I did mention that there are some minis that came with the game, or quite a few minis that come with the game for the troops and the rioters. Let me just show you what those look like up close. The troop here is kind of like a RoboCopy kind of robot soldier of some kind, and the rioter here, I hope that's focused, is basically someone with a little Uzi and a Molotov cocktail. I do like the sculpts. They are pretty big and they do fill up the board, but they do go on those spaces very well and block things off very well. So it does work, and they do, from the viewpoint of the player playing, it is quite a bit easier for me to see that than it is to see these sort of washed out tokens and to look at a quick glance which mini is which rather than which token is which. So I do prefer the minis when I am playing the actual game, but again, for ease of you seeing things on camera, I did want to use those tokens. These kind of tracker pieces here, this yellow, red, and orange, they are just sort of pieces of clear acrylic, but what is kind of cool about them as you're playing is, I don't know how it looks on camera, but while I'm playing, you can definitely, at least from the right angle, you can see the number of the track through that cube. And because of the way light bends in the plastic, you can kind of see it from an angle that you wouldn't normally see just by looking at the number on the board. So I do think that that's kind of a clever idea. I do like the tokens. The science tokens make sense. The coins make sense. There are 5s and 1s. Let me show you those up close a little bit, show you some more of those tokens. Again, for the science as well, I didn't use them, but they have 1s and 2s. And just while I'm here showing tokens, there are these also these sort of explosion tokens that are used in other solo scenarios. I do like the look of all of the tokens in this game. Everything looks the way it should, it works the way it should, and it's easy to read and understand. But I have to say that beyond that, I'm not really a fan of the way that this game looks. The background of all of the cards is kind of blah. The artwork here, I don't know why, it's not horrible. It just looks somehow amateurish. And some of it looks good, some of it looks not great. Some of the sort of design, like the backs of these cards, these eyeballs, it all just kind of looks eh. Nothing about it turns me off. I wouldn't go away from this game because of the way that it looks, but realistically, I would have loved to see a little bit more punchiness in the artwork to pull you into the game. The funny thing though is, one of the reasons that I originally got this game is at quick glance, the box cover of this game, which you saw as the thumbnail of the video, looked really cool to me. On second glance, it looks a little bit not as good in person, but it was enough that it pulled me into the game. So there's something to be said for the box art of this game, that it did make me intrigued to find out more. But once I opened the box, I do have to say that all of this does look a little bit amateurish, and I would have liked to see a little bit more, I don't want to say effort, because I'm sure whoever did this put a lot of effort into it, but I would have liked to see the art and the design of this spiffed up just a little bit. That's basically it for the components. There are some more components in the box. There are some letter cards. There are some sort of role cards, because the multiplayer game is a sort of semi-co-op with assassins trying to kill people in the game. I haven't played the multiplayer. I haven't done anything with any of those cards, so I'm not going to bother showing them on the screen right now, because this is a solo video and there is no use for them in the solo game. The only other component I do want to talk about is this little AP tracker. I mentioned it as I was setting up. They are really, really tiny, and they do get knocked around a little bit. It would have been nice to see these cards maybe the same size as the brief cards with a slightly larger tracker. There is space in the box, so there's no reason that this had to be so small, because again, the ability text on here also is really small, and that could have been just a bit bigger. Again, the same size as these brief cards. Otherwise, I do want to show you while I'm here, I did play with the Frank the Alien scenario this time, but there are a bunch of scenarios. We've got 5 different tiles, and each of these is double-sided. So just want to show you some of the characters, because they all are unique characters. Here's this guy that we played with, and they've all got unique personalities and different sort of abilities and different end-game goals that you're working on. And I do have to say I appreciate that. I'll talk more about that in my final thoughts when I talk about how I feel about the game, but there is absolutely a whole lot of variability here in the solo mode, and while I was here with the components, I just figured I'd show you these tiles. Last thing I do like to show in my videos while we're at the table is the insert. The insert for the game looks like this. Here you can see all of those minis I was talking about. These are the letter cards that I mentioned before. I'll just flip them over and show them to you right now. Again, I haven't ever played with these because I've never played multiplayer, and I'm not a huge fan of that sort of semi-co-op trader kind of game, or that social deduction mixed into a regular kind of worker placement-y kind of game. So I'm not sure that I ever will play with that, but this is the insert. You can see the minis all fit in here. The brief cards fit in here. The beacon cards and all of the influence cards fit into these 2 slots. This holds the characters. It also holds those role cards that I was talking about before in there. And there's also some science cards, because there is another action in the lab in a multiplayer game that lets you do sort of science experiments that gets you stuff. I guess I haven't looked at the multiplayer game, but those all fit in there. You can see there's sort of a recessed area here that the board folds in, and it gets held by that and by this over here. It is a little bit of work to get everything in there, because the components, all of the little tokens and stuff, do kind of fit in the extra space here, here, and here, but you do kind of have to squeeze some in with the minis. And if you don't get it in there just right, the board doesn't sit flat, but it does, and it does fit in there, and it does close without any lid lift. It just takes a little bit of effort. So maybe a few less minis or a little bit more usage of some of this empty space, but it's not a bad insert. It's definitely welcome to have the insert because I can turn it around on a shelf and all of the cards stay where it is. So I'm pleased with the insert, although it could have been possibly a little bit better. With all that said, let's head back up top and I'll let you know what I think about the game itself. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the playthrough. This is an interesting one for me because, as I mentioned up top, this is designed as a very interactive sort of semi-co-op hidden trader kind of game as a multiplayer experience, and they did then decide to add a solo mode to it, which I was very interested to check out because I was curious to see how exactly they could do a solo mode in a game like this. Now with that said, I originally picked up on this one mostly because the front box cover and this idea of this sort of dark, sort of dystopian future political landscape was an interesting one to me, and the box cover was enough that it pulled me in. But I'm not going to lie to you, when this game came to me and I opened it up, everything looks kind of dark, and as I mentioned in the components bit, everything, art to me just feels somewhat amateurish. And I'm not going to lie to you, I opened up the box and I opened up the rulebook, and first I was very excited to see that there's a separate solo or solo and co-op sort of 1 to 2 player rulebook that's removed from the base game rulebook. And that was exciting to me because I knew that this was going to be quite a different experience than the multiplayer sort of semi-co-op hidden trader game. So I was excited that I wasn't going to have to sort of cross-reference to figure out how the game plays, but unfortunately that's not really true. Because while most of the setup is explained in the 1 to 2 player rulebook, other than that, mostly what it's pointing out is the changes in there, and there were a few points in that rulebook that it says refer back to the main rulebook for this action or for this section or for this phase. So you still do have to jump back and forth, and it is nice to have them separate because you can focus on that solo specific content, but you will still need to refer to the main rulebook. And then on top of that, I was daunted because unfortunately the rulebook in this game is pretty rough. There are sort of sections that run through step by step, this is how the game plays, but they're sort of both before and after the sections of the rulebook that explain the different pieces of the game and the different sort of mechanisms or different interlocking pieces of the game, and the flow of it just is kind of somewhat all over the place, and it was very difficult to follow. That said, this is a review copy, so I did push myself into this game, and I was very, very happy to see that online, Stella and Tarrant at Meeple University have put together a how to play video on both the main game and then an extension on the solo at the end of that video, and that video was incredibly helpful to play, so big thumbs up to them for that. And now I hope that this video can also work as a sort of how to play for the solo mode as well. But that said, after watching that video, after understanding how the game works, and then going back to the rules all do make sense as written. It really is just a matter of how things are laid out and the order of things and how things flow. And it's a little bit hard to follow and jump back and forth between things. And if you have a question during gameplay, it's often hard to figure out which piece or which section of the rulebook those things are in. So I just wanted to point that out up front because after getting over that hump of what did I get myself into with the look of the game and the rulebook of the game, diving into the game, and now having played the game through several of the different solo scenarios, I have to say that I'm very glad that I put in the work to try this out because I do enjoy this game quite a bit. Is this the multiplayer experience? I don't know because I haven't played the multiplayer experience, so I can't really talk to that, but obviously the multiplayer experience is a semi-co-op thing with hidden traders and people fighting against other people, and that's not going to happen here because there's nothing really fighting against you in this game, at least in that kind of interactive way, aside from during those briefs when you are putting in those cards. There are always 2 cards being added that could throw a wrench in the works, but I'll get back to that in just a minute. Let's talk about this game overall as a solo experience. It's not an AI game. It really is a 1 to 2 player co-op, it says, probably because with too many more players it would be easier or just the round structure wouldn't work. But realistically, this is a cooperative game that can be played with a single character. So this is not the kind of thing when you're playing against opposition. This is the kind of thing where you're playing against the game, playing against goals of the game, much like many other co-op kind of games. And if I was going to describe this game sort of as an overall experience, I think this is sort of next level, sort of gamer level pandemic to some extent. And what I mean by that is this is another one of those sort of threat management kind of games where bad things are coming at you and you're trying to keep those at bay while you're focused on achieving some kind of goal. But in this one, the interesting, unique twist is a couple of things. But the first thing is that there are 10 different scenarios in this box. So every time I play this game, at least 10 times, I can switch up those goals. And switching up those goals is very interesting to me because what that does is it's sort of pushing me to try out the game in different ways, if that makes sense. There are a variety of different mechanisms here, which I will get to in just a second. But basically, by having these scenarios in the box, it brings sort of automatic variability to the game, not because necessarily what I'm doing is different, but because there are many different avenues to accomplish things and there are many different sort of switches and buttons and dials to play with in this game. And by changing up the goals and by changing up the way that the game works, it forces you to try those different things and manipulate those different things in different ways to achieve different outcomes. And I think that's really, really cool here because for the most part, the basic structure of how the game plays isn't changing with this scenario, aside from one additional space that's placed out with the tile of that scenario, a little bit of different setup rules for some of the different scenarios. Again, the addition of specific tokens like the tokens, the laser gun, the hypnosis ray that you saw in the playthrough that I did in this video. But otherwise, all of the spaces on the board, all of the cards in the game are the same for every scenario, but the way that they are used or the sort of the focus that you're putting onto them as you play is changing with each of these scenarios. So right out of the box, there's a bunch of variability in this game, and not just a bunch of variability in this game, but a push to try out different pathways to victory in this game without any sort of need for me to be creative or for me to say, okay, this game, I want to try this, because the game forces me to do that. And I always appreciate that in games. One of my favorite games, Merchant's Cove, their scenarios, their solo scenarios are similar in that it makes me try things and tweak things and twist things in different ways. And I tend to really love that in games. So big thumbs up for those scenarios in this game. But let's go back a step and talk about those basic mechanisms. This game is basically sort of an action point allowance, action selection kind of game that's got a hint of worker placement. And the reason I say a hint of worker placement is because I am placing out my worker, which is really just my piece, taking the actions, and those actions are being paid for with action points. So that's where my sort of action point allowance comes in. But why do I say a hint of worker placement? Because throughout the game, those rioters are going to be coming out when the civil unrest track gets to a certain level. And those rioters are blocking spaces just like they would be in a worker placement game. So this isn't just like a game where in Pandemic where I can just say, okay, I'm using this action to do this, and this action to do that, and this action to do that, because I have to physically be able to go to the location to trigger that action. And if that location is blocked off by one of these rioters, I can't go there. So there is still this hint of blockable spaces that you would have in a worker placement game. But I don't have workers, I just have one pawn, and I am moving them around back and forth and staying in one place as much as I like to, so long as I can pay the sort of action points or the cost of that action that I'm taking. So it's this interesting balance of flexibility of an action point system, but with that sort of crunch of a worker placement system that can block me off and force me to try other potential actions to get to the same sort of end game goal or end decision goal. And I like that here. I do really enjoy the way that this game works as far as I have a set number of action points in every round. And without fail, in every round, there is a long list of things that I need to get accomplished by either the end of the round or by the end of the game. And how I can sort of fit these into each other so that I'm spending the points as necessary most efficiently to do the actions that really need to get done now and pushing things off until later if they can be pushed off until later. So this balance of timing and sort of the order of things that I do and efficient use of my points is a really, really interesting one here. But again, there's a bunch of stuff building on top of that because I need to get money to pay for some of these things, and I need to get money for a lot of the end game goals that I'm going to accomplish. And all of that happens over in the treasury. And the treasury has the ability to just get me money and or to raise the taxes so that every year or every round I'm getting some starting capital that I don't have to spend an action to get. So it's cheaper to get money now, but then I have to do it every time, so it compounds and it gets more expensive. Whereas the base tax raising is tricky because not only does it take a lot of action points, it really pushes up that unrest, that civil unrest track. And I'll talk about that in just a second. But it really does push up that civil unrest track, which means that it's a very big risk for me to do that, especially early in the game, because then I could have riots happening for the rest of the game if I can't get them under control. But also then, it does raise my base taxes, which means I start every round with a set of money that I can then do other things with. And moving up then to the top of the board above that, the next thing is the set of beacons that we're launching. And that's where most of the money is going to be spent unless there's a specific condition in the scenario that uses money or requires money. But these beacons are going to be really cool because this is an additional piece that's another layer onto the game in that these are all sort of rule breaking. I don't want to say rule breaking because they still follow the rules, but what I mean is these are all ways to activate a lot of the same actions you would by going to spaces and spending action points, and or sort of more powerful versions of those actions, except now that I don't have to send somebody to a place that costs something. I simply have to send them to a place and pay the cost of that beacon once it's been launched. And generally the cost of those beacons is either free or much cheaper than whatever regular action would be doing the same thing. So it is also important early in the game potentially to get those beacons launched so that once per round I can activate them. The earlier I get them done, the more I can activate them because they are a once per round usage thing. But it also saves me money. It saves me action points that I can use on other things. So this is another engine that's sort of running there in the background as a sort of alternate way to do things, but tends to be more efficient and better than the base actions themselves. Then you've got the whole science area. Now in the multiplayer game, I don't really know how it works because I didn't read all of that section because I skipped it as it's removed from the game, but there is this whole scientific sort of discovery in these cards over there that interact in different ways. That's not here in the solo mode. So the science one is more a way to sort of mitigate some of the overarching big bad risk. Not the riots. We'll talk about those last as I get to the last section, but the idea of the game doing bad things to you. Every scenario has positive things and negative things that it can do to you. And those are going to be managed by that centerpiece where you're spending 4 science to move up on that track, to push towards more positive and stay away from the negative. And realistically, this is something, at least in my experience, you really can't allow to get away from you. And this might just be the way I play the game, and it may not be the best way to play the game. You did see me just lose this game. But I try to focus my efforts as much as possible to push up once on that every round so that I never have to deal with the negative effects. But maybe if I was focusing on other things to boost other things up more powerfully and I took one negative hit, it wouldn't be the end of the world. But then later on, since you do shift back 1 space every round, I'd have to push several times to get back up into the good space before too late, or I would just keep getting pummeled with that negative effect. So this is just sort of this little tickle on your back that sort of exists throughout the whole game that you kind of have to make sure that you're always paying attention to, unless you've really done something else that makes it not that important to pay attention on any given one round. But it is something there that you sort of have to pay attention to at all times. But the other big thing that you're paying attention to in this area, well, there's 2, but the other big standard thing you're paying attention to every round is the civil unrest track, because these riots are going to be really painful. And again, I keep saying this, but I will talk about the riots next. But the riots are going to be really painful, putting out rioters, blocking off spaces, and ultimately causing the threat to rise, which could kill you immediately if you get the threat all the way up to 6. Or skull, but yeah, 6. So anyway, what that means is, anytime I take an action that drives up that civil unrest means getting money, getting science, getting taxes raised, all of this stuff is causing civil unrest that's pushing towards this riot. And if I don't slow it down and I don't push it back, it's going to keep crashing and it's going to keep crashing. And I'm going to get more and more and more riots, leading to more and more threat, leading to more and more stuff that I have to deal with. So one of the spaces here in the science area or the lab is that I can sort of push back the civil unrest and calm down those people who are about to riot. in the city. But this takes a lot of action, and it takes a lot of sort of distraction from other things that are going on to make that happen. So you really only want to do that if it's really necessary at any given moment to really push that civil unrest and keep those rioters at bay. So then the last section, the sort of war room area, is where the sort of real threat mitigation comes in. This is the part that feels most pandemic to me, in that when a riot is triggered from having civil unrest from your other actions, you are placing out rioters by rolling a die, and they fill in different spaces. And now it's my turn to get rid of those. And there are different ways to get rid of them depending on the scenario. Sometimes the scenario-specific action in that corner space of the science track or science area has the ability to remove some of those. But most of the time I'm coming here in the war room and rolling a die and removing one or two of the rioters of my choice. But realistically, waiting too long is also going to be a big problem, because the other option you have here is to place out troops. And the troops are basically a trap that sit there for when a rioter gets placed. If there's a troop there, the rioter doesn't get placed, and instead the troop goes away. So early on, you can go out and seed the board with these troops, and then when riots happen later, it's not that big a deal because they get blocked and they get thrown away and so on. So then you can focus on other things that might raise the civil unrest because you've been prepared to block off the rioters. So this is another layer of which thing do I focus on when? Because if I've saved the world with troops, then I don't care so much if the rioters come because they're not such a threat. And then I can focus on other things that might hurt me otherwise. But if I don't spend the time on the troops, then I can't focus too much on civil unrest going up, because then the rioters are going to smash everything. Then they're going to block off stuff. And if they block off stuff, then I can't do anything. And it just keeps compounding and compounding. So there's many different sort of pathways you can focus on. And then at the end of every round is the brief. Well, here's another sort of threat / positive, because I've got all of this sort of influence in all these different realms in sort of this political landscape. And the brief is going to come up with a position that I have to sort of support or go against based on the different influence that I have. But regardless, whatever influence I'm putting in, the world is also putting in 2 cards as well. And that can really screw things up, because I need to pay attention to how much am I using those influence cards to improve things, means get me more science tokens to spend on that thing to shift me up on the scenario track. When am I spending more cards to re-roll on things like getting rid of rioters or decreasing the civil unrest? And did I keep enough of those influence cards to match the kind of influence that's coming out on that brief so that I don't get crushed by whatever the super negative effect of that brief is? And then at the beginning, in the one-player game, at the beginning of every round, did I select the right influence card? Should I go real heavy on one kind of influence? Should I sort of spread out like I did in this video and try and get as balanced a spread of influence as I can? All of this is really interesting, and it's really fun to see how all of these different things connect. And then again, coming back to the scenarios, each time I play, the goals are different. How am I changing things? How am I doing things? In this game, I had the hypnosis ray that could turn rioters into troops. Very interesting. One game, I was focused on getting lots of money. One game, I was basically trying to just blow everything up by placing out these rocket tokens all over the board. There's just so much variety in the scenarios, the way that all of these different actions interact with each other. It's a whole lot of fun. There's a lot of really cool things happening here. Plus, every time you play, you choose a character. And these characters are really cool too, because they do 2 things. Number one, the first thing that these characters do is they give you some kind of special bonus ability that strengthens your interaction with the game in some way. And if that was all that they did, that would be cool. But you see this in a lot of games, that you get a sort of variable player power that gives you some special thing that you can do that nobody else can do, blah, blah, blah. But in this case, not only are you getting that strong ability, but you're also then hit with 1 or 2 negative weaknesses that mess up the way that things work. So maybe you're strong over here, but then it takes more resources to do such and such. I had one character that every time I moved from a different quadrant on the board, I had to use an influence card, which really made me focus on how can I get as much done in one quadrant, or at most 2 quadrants in a single round, not hopping all over the place. And that really made things more difficult or more interesting. The one you saw this time had me spending more stuff to activate some of the actions. There's all these different things, and it's really cool that you have to balance this sort of boosted ability with these sort of more difficult or more painful things to do or harder things to do based on the weaknesses. And this balance, again, is another level that's added to this game that really does make it interesting to me. Now, it sounds to me like, or it sounds so far that this is like the best game I've ever played, and I love it, and I love it, and I love it. And I wouldn't go that far. It's not mind-blowing, it's not anything amazingly brand new, but the way that all of this interacts and the way that it layers together and the variety in the scenarios really does make for a whole lot of fun. But ultimately, again, this does feel like a next level sort of gamer level Pandemic. But there's also a little bit of negative here as well. And the negative is the core is still not all that complicated. There are sort of a couple of things that you can do: getting money, getting science to push up on the track, getting beacons, launching beacons. But again, those beacons are doing pretty much the same things that the other things do, just in different combinations or in less expensive ways and so on. And then, of course, putting out troops, blocking off rioters, removing rioters, managing threat. It's sort of the same loop every time you play. I keep saying that the scenarios are great and it does change things up and it does offer different ways to think about the game. And that's very true in that it does really force me to try the game in different ways. But ultimately, the overarching game loop is somewhat similar every time you play the game, and it does get a little less fresh. Now, that said, this is the first time I played the Frank the Alien scenario, and this one changed things quite a bit more than several of the other scenarios I had played before. So I'm hoping that in the next few scenarios that I haven't tried yet, there are some even more twists, bigger twists, or more interesting ways that things change up a little bit. But ultimately, I do enjoy that core game loop, so I am enjoying playing that, even if things are a little bit samey every time. The other small negative that I have that you might have as well is there is quite a bit of output randomness in this game. And what that means is I go to a space and then I roll a die, and what I roll is what happens. That also happens with the scenario-specific objective. Positive or negative is up to me, but once I get that positive or negative, I roll the die and what comes out is what happens. So there is a lot of randomness that basically if every time I roll a rioter and it's the same number, I'm not adding that many rioters to the board, then I can clear them off pretty quickly and that riot goes away. Meanwhile, next time I play, every time I roll, it's a different number. The rioters fill up the board, the threat level climbs, and game over. And that's all based on the roll of a die. And that's true also when I'm doing the scenario positive and negative effects. If I roll the thing that I'm looking for, yay. If I roll something different, not so yay. Same thing with the brief cards. If I pull two cards that's like -5 and -5 and suddenly my total drops by 10, that was just a randomness that pushed me from yay to very not yay. So there is quite a bit of randomness here that does just happen based on a card flip or a die roll. But again, there's quite a bit of mitigation that can be had by using those influence cards to re-roll, to change rolls, and then ultimately for the briefs, just to plan out things so that you have a lot of influence so you can combat big negative swings potentially from that card pull. And I want to say that that negative is bad, but it's not 100% bad, because that sort of feeling of push your luck does add to that sort of feeling of dread and threat that does come through in this sort of setting and this theme in this game. So I do appreciate the feeling of, am I going to get there? Can I make it? Will this roll help me? Will I get what I need? Kind of feeling that does come out of those random die rolls. So I can't say that that's horrible, but I want you to understand that if you're looking for a game that is all strategy, this isn't it, because there is quite a bit of this output randomness thrown in there. But ultimately, I do think that randomness leads to more of the sort of thematic flair of this game. So no, this isn't my absolute favorite game of all time, but yes, I do enjoy every play of this game quite a bit. It plays out pretty quickly. The core game loop is a lot of fun. The switched up differences of each scenario and each character and the combination of the characters with each scenario really does offer quite a lot of variability. And this was a very nice surprise for me because I really didn't know what I expected going in. I know that the main game in this box, aside from the way that you interact with the board, the main game in this box is quite a bit different than the solo two-player co-op mode. But at least from what I've seen with the solo mode, I'm enjoying this game quite a bit. And this is definitely one I recommend that you at least check out. I hope that this video was helpful to you. As always, if it was, I do ask that you like, subscribe, and click the bell icon below. And I'll see you next time. Thanks.